It's a Tuesday. Someone asks you where you want to go for dinner, and 45 minutes later, you're still thinking about it. Not because dinner matters that much, not because you're indecisive by nature, but because somewhere between the question and the answer, your brain opens 17 tabs. What if you choose wrong? What if the other person secretly wanted something else and is just being polite? What if you go there and it's too loud and the whole evening gets ruined? What if you end up at a place you've been before and they think you're boring? What if you suggest something adventurous and they think you're difficult? What if? What if? What if? And by the time you land on an answer, you're not actually confident in it. You've thought about it so much that thinking about it more feels like the only responsible thing to do. If this sounds familiar, welcome. You're not alone. And more importantly, you're not broken. What's happening in your brain is something far more specific than simply being bad at decisions. And understanding it changes everything about how you experience it. Let's start with what overthinking actually is at a neurological level, because most people assume it's a thinking problem. It isn't. Overthinking is an anxiety management strategy. Your brain isn't overanalyzing because it loves analysis. It's overanalyzing because analysis feels like control, and control feels like safety. And your nervous system somewhere along the line decided that safety was more important than speed. Research from the University of Sussex found that people who overthink show significantly higher activity in the default mode network, the part of the brain responsible for self-referential thinking, future projection, and mental simulation. The overthinker's brain doesn't just think about the decision. It simulates every possible version of the decision and then evaluates each simulation for potential threat. It's not inefficiency, it's hypervigilance wearing the costume of logic. And here's where it gets genuinely interesting. Because the overthinking brain isn't actually trying to find the best answer. It's trying to find the safe answer, the one that minimizes the possibility of regret, the one that protects against the specific pain of having made a choice that turned out to be wrong. Psychologists call this regret aversion, the tendency to weight the pain of potential future regret more heavily than the potential benefit of a good outcome. For overthinkers, the fear of choosing wrong is almost always louder than the hope of choosing right. But here's the part nobody talks about. That fear didn't come from nowhere. For the vast majority of people who overthink chronically and persistently, the pattern has roots. It was learned in environments where making the wrong choice had real consequences, where mistakes were punished harshly, where disappointment was expressed in ways that felt dangerous, where approval was conditional and unpredictable. In those environments, analyzing every option before moving wasn't anxiety. It was intelligence. It was the intelligent child's survival mechanism. Figure out every possible outcome before committing so that when you move safely. The problem is, that mechanism kept running long after the environment changed. The adult brain still treats every decision, including dinner, with the same threat detection intensity that the child needed to survive in an environment where wrong choices had real costs. The nervous system didn't get the update. It's still solving a problem that in most cases no longer exists. There's another layer, and this one is about perfectionism. Many chronic overthinkers are not afraid of failure. They are afraid of choosing imperfectly. There's a difference. Failure is about outcome. Imperfection is about process. The overthinker often knows rationally that most decisions are reversible, that most choices can be course-corrected, but the nervous system isn't listening to that rational knowledge. It's listening to the belief, deep, foundational, often invisible, that there is a correct answer and that finding it is their responsibility, and that failing to find it reflects something about their competence, their judgment, or their worth. Psychologist Barry Schwartz, in his research on what he calls the paradox of choice, found something counterintuitive. More options don't lead to better decisions. They lead to more anxiety, more second-guessing, and less satisfaction with whatever is ultimately chosen. The overthinker already knows this intuitively. Every additional option feels like an additional responsibility. Every additional variable feels like an additional potential mistake. The brain that overthinks doesn't experience freedom of choice as freedom. It experiences it as exposure. Now let's talk about what overthinking actually costs. Because it's not neutral, the cognitive load of running continuous mental simulations is genuinely exhausting. Research consistently shows that chronic overthinking is associated with elevated cortisol, disrupted sleep, reduced decision quality over time, and significantly higher rates of anxiety and depression. The brain that was designed to protect against bad outcomes is, through the very mechanism of its protection, creating worse ones. There's also the time cost. The dinner decision that took 45 minutes. The email you rewrote 11 times. The conversation you rehearsed for 3 days before having it. These aren't isolated moments. For the chronic overthinker, they are the texture of daily life. Hundreds of small decisions, each one receiving the processing power of a major life choice. The brain burning fuel on problems that don't require that much fuel, leaving less available for the things that actually do. Let's be honest about something. If you are an overthinker, you have probably been told to just decide, to stop thinking and go with your gut, to trust yourself. And you have probably found that advice completely unhelpful, not because you're stubborn, but because the instruction to stop thinking doesn't address what the thinking is for. The overthinking exists because some part of your nervous system believes that the only thing standing between you and a catastrophic outcome is the analysis. Telling that system to stop is like telling someone who is white-knuckling a safety rail to just let go. The instruction misses the point entirely. What actually helps is not less thinking. It's a different relationship with uncertainty, because the thing overthinking is ultimately trying to solve isn't the decision. It's the uncertainty, the not knowing how it will turn out, the gap between choosing and seeing the result. For the overthinker, that gap is intolerable, and more analysis feels like the only way to close it. But here's what's fascinating. The gap can't actually be closed by thinking. No amount of analysis will tell you how the dinner is going to feel before you go. No amount of rehearsal will tell you how the conversation will land before you have it. The uncertainty is structural. It's built into the nature of decision-making, and the overthinker's nervous system at some level knows this, which is why the thinking never quite finishes, because it was never going to find what it was looking for. What changes things, not instantly, not completely, but genuinely, is learning to tolerate the gap, to make a choice before certainty arrives, because certainty was never going to arrive anyway. To practice the thing the overthinking was trying to avoid, the experience of choosing without knowing and discovering that you survive it, that the wrong dinner is just dinner, that the imperfect email still gets read, that the conversation you couldn't fully prepare for still somehow, usually, works out. Every time an overthinker makes a decision before the analysis is complete and discovers that the outcome was survivable, that is a deposit into a new account. A slowly accumulating body of evidence that contradicts the foundational belief that uncertainty is dangerous, that builds, over time, a different relationship with the gap. Not the absence of discomfort, but a growing capacity to act despite it. The brain that overthinks is not a broken brain. It is a careful brain. A brain that was shaped somewhere by the genuine experience that things could go wrong, and that going wrong had real costs. The care isn't the problem. The application of that care to problems that don't require it. That's what creates the suffering. You are not too much. Your brain is not malfunctioning. It is doing exactly what it learned to do, and what it can learn, slowly, imperfectly, one decision at a time, is that not every gap needs to be filled before you step across it. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is decide, not because the analysis is complete, but because you've realized it never will be, and you're going anyway. Subscribe to Brain Decoded for more psychology that puts words to things you've been carrying without them. And the next time you're 45 minutes into a dinner decision, now you know exactly what's happening and why it makes complete sense.